What was your worst, weirdest experience at somebody else's house? Story 1. Went to a friend's house. We came in and somebody started yelling and swearing at him from another room. For no reason and impromptu. Scary, threatening and abusive sounding. It was his dad and the dad didn't realize I was there. The kid was cool about it, just kind of, maybe we should just go for a walk. It was how cool the kid was that unnerved me. Just his day to day. Story 2. In college, I went to this girl's house during a free period with 6 or 7 friends. We arrive, and she opens the door, says hello to her father, and immediately strips down to her bra and panties in the living room. We spend 45 minutes hanging out with her and her dad, and the whole time she's walking around in basically nothing. I asked her dad about it at a different time, and he nonchalantly says she's always done this and acted like it was a completely normal thing to do. Also, bonus points for her goth friend who sat there playing with a knife the whole time. Story 3. Stayed at my friend's house one time and found out her family only uses red light bulb in their house because an astrologer told them to do so. Story 4. As a 12 years old we shifted to a small town from our cattle property so we kids could go to high school. I didn't know anyone at school till the weird kid befriended me, invited me home after school one day. There's me thinking great, I'm making friends. When we got there her mom was obviously slightly drunk. No father around that I could see, just sitting in her room talking crap when her mum calls us into her bedroom. So we went in and her mum is lying on a single bed and there's a double in there that we both sort of lounged on. Then her mum starts crying. The girl tells me her dad died about 6 months ago. In going so sorry to hear that, her mum starts telling me how he was a bad alcoholic and they'd gone to bed one night. He was spooning her when he died in his sleep with his arms wrapped around the mum. Cause she was drunk too, she didn't wake up till quite late and his body had started rigor mortis. She realizes and starts screaming. Daughter runs in. Dad is dead and mum is stuck in his arms. Had to call police to help apparently. She couldn't get out. Best bit though was I was sitting on the bed where he died 6 mths previous, but they'd never changed the sheets or covers. They smelled musty. No wonder the girl acted weird. They both really needed therapy, but this was nearly 50 years ago. Story 5. A buddy and I were walking down the street and noticed a drunk guy bothering a woman outside a store and his balls were hanging out of his shorts. We stopped to help, and so does some guy in an army jacket. And after the cops come by to deal with the drink guy, army guy invites us over to have a beer. We were about 14 or so at the time. We said sure, get to his apartment and he gives us a beer each. And shows us his big knife. Tells us how to gouge out eyes. And how to shoot someone under the chin at the throat pointing up so if by chance they survive, they will be paralyzed. Then proceeds to demonstrate on me a choke move he was taught. Which fucking hurt. My friend had the knife in hand just in case army guy didn't let go. After I was let go and able to breath we pieced out of there fast. The longer we sat there, the more scared I was getting. Haven't thought about that for some time. Story 6. At someone's birthday party at her house. She divided us into groups and made us write songs about her. Story 7. When I was in college there was this redneck named Scott who lived with his mother and was desperate to leave and move in with me. When I was helping him move but his mom lit up a joint which I ignored. Then she tried to grope my crotch. Careful, Scott shouted. My mom is a pervert. Over the years that is meme for me. Story 8. When I was a kid I went over to a friend's house. At some point they went to have dinner. They, meaning the whole family. I wasn't at any point asked to join them. So while they ate I sat in the living room and played on their Atari. Story 9. I remember when I was a kid, probably around 10 or so we went to friends of our families for dinner. The husband and wife got into a very loud screaming match over whether to serve creamed corn or frozen corn. I'm talking in each other's faces and being shrilly loud. 10-year-old me was fascinated by how such a mundane object could arise such passions, and of course I wanted to see how it turned out but we were instead quickly ordered into the car and left. Still never understand how corn caused such a disagreement. I found out later they got divorced. Story 10. When I was about 10 my cousins and I were sleeping at my grandma's house in Oklahoma. My uncle Rick came home drunk and got loud so my grandma started yelling at him and hitting him with a rolled up magazine. My other uncle Cecil, who was only 4 years older than us, told us 3 kids to run out the back door and hide at the creek cause Rick's a mean drunk. It's about midnight and we run down to the creek and stand around looking at each other for about 10 minutes and then we walk back. We come in through the front door with muddy feet and leaves in our hair. Uncle Rick had already gone to bed. He wasn't mean at all. My grandma yells at us asking why we were outside. We say we were hiding at the creek. She says who told you to hide at the creek? We all point at Uncle Cecil who was in the corner laughing. She starts chasing him around the table and beating him with a magazine. He was hiding his face yelling, ow ow ow, like he was in pain but I could see he was still laughing. We all ran to the bedroom and jumped in bed and pulled the covers over our heads until it got quiet and we went to sleep. Story 11. Well my late wife's clinically psychotic brother pulled a gun on me for no reason at Thanksgiving one year. Also her parents were trash people. Story 12. I found a hardcore porn magazine under my friend's mattress, top bed on a bunk bed, so it was about at eye level, must have been sticking out a bit because something caught my attention. We were 10 years old maybe. She just blew it off like it was nothing. A year later my mom banned me from sleeping over at my friend's house. She was still welcome at our house. I was secretly relieved because the vibe was weird over there for a million reasons. When I was an adult, my mom finally told me that the reason for the ban was because teachers suspected sexual abuse. My mom taught at our school. I'm sure it got reported to CPS but nothing came of it. Anyway, pretty sure the magazine I found that day was their version of bedtime stories. Story 13. When I was around 12 I was over a friend's house playing some video games in her basement. I guess her 10-year-old brother was mad he couldn't play because she had guests, so he walked into the basement naked to scare us out. Story 14. When I was 8 I slept over a friend's house. For dinner they had pancakes. Everyone ate together. After I put the syrup on my pancakes I was scolded by the dad for using too much syrup. I then noticed everyone at the table only put a tablespoon on their pancakes. After I ate the pancakes, they took my plate and tried to pour the unused syrup back into the container. Story 15. We went to a foreign classmate's house to do our film class project. He said that since we're making a horror film, we could try filming in the dark storage space above the dining room. So indeed he climbed up there to get some establishing shots, but as soon as he crawled in, we found out the ceiling wasn't made of concrete and he ended up breaking the ceiling and falling down. Luckily he wasn't hurt, but now there's a big human-sized hole in the ceiling. Needless to say his parents were pissed and we had to change our filming location to my aunt's condo. Story 16. This one time I was at my ex-GF's GF during that time, and we weren't doing very well in the relationship. We were in the driveway talking and we ended up sitting in her car while we talked about how the relationship wasn't the same as before and how we weren't really feeling like it was going anywhere, the regular talk before a breakup. It was pretty tense and kinda sad. We noticed that the bathroom window was on, so we lowered our voices as we didn't want her family to hear us talking about breaking up. She was about to cry when we heard a massive, compressed fart echo through the confines of the porcelain toilet. The atmosphere changed entirely. We tried not to laugh, but it was impossible not to. Her mom called her with doubt as she asked her name. We rushed the hell out of the car and proceeded to laugh our asses off. That day, whatever her mom ate before laying the log saved our relationship. We didn't break up until a few months later. Story 17. Went to a friend's early Saturday in middle school, possibly 9th grade. Went grocery shopping with her sister and mom. Well, we get back and I had a bunch of bags of groceries waiting in the garage by the door. My friend said to just go in. I didn't want to because her dad was home and I didn't meet him yet. My friend insisted it was fine. I went in from the garage door and when I looked in directly to the right in the kitchen, her dad was cooking something on the stove. In only his tighty whities. I don't remember which expletive he yelled, but I immediately went back out the way I came. I can only imagine the face I was making. Somehow, my friend convinced me to still stay the night. I was deeply embarrassed and avoided her father. Lol, I felt like such a bad guest. I always knock and I was mostly mad at her for telling me to go in. Hilarious now though. Story 18. When I was 14 I went to a friend's house for a birthday party sleepover. There was 5 other girls invited. After dinner we got settled in the lounge room to watch horror movies. Her parents came in and sat on the couch, took out 2 huge bongs and got stoned. They started commentating the movie as we watched it, like it was a live sports event. This was the first time all us girls had seen drugs or been around someone on drugs. So weird. Birthday girl was so embarrassed. We never went back to her house for a sleepover after that one. Story 19. One time I went to a sleepover when I was 12 and the mom was there the whole time. I don't just mean in the house doing her own thing, I mean she had a sleeping bag out on the living room floor with all of us. Most awkward sleepover I've ever been to. Worst part is the girl didn't even think it was weird. Also we have to go to bed at 8 o'clock, so there's that. Story 20. I went over to a place that a person I was dating lived. He and his roommate of 3 years had insisted on permanently keeping all the windows open and essentially allowing the house to become overgrown. They had multiple birds living in there. Also were random things written throughout the house in pen, Sharpie, crayon, as if whenever they had a thought they'd scribble it down. We got high as balls and watched Evil Dead. I got so tripped out during one scene I just left without explanation. Story 21. This isn't the worst and it's not my weirdest, but I was hitchhiking in upstate NY when I was in my early 20s. Some nice people offered to take me home and give me a ride to Syracuse in the morning. When I got to the house, the first thing anyone said to me was, "I take it's been a while since you've been able to shave." Same dude tried explaining to me that I was hitchhiking because I was sad, and that I was sad because I hadn't had enough sex. I played dumb and let him talk in circles. There were 10 to 15 adults and children living there and 2 different dogs had just had litters. I took a shower and was scooping puppies out of the tub the whole time. When it was time to pass out, someone took me upstairs to sleep in a spare room. While we were walking up the stairs, he handed a bottle of Febreze over his shoulder and said, "You're gonna want this. There's some kinda dead animal trapped in the wall and we haven't been able to find it but we can smell it. One of the cats is missing." So, highlight of the whole fiasco was a Home Depot shopping cart in the kitchen that was overflowing with Mountain Dew cans with a chainsaw sticking blade up in the middle of it. They told me to come back and work apple harvest with them and I never did. 10 out of 10 would go back though. Story 22. A long time ago I went to my weed dealer's apartment to get some weed. He was a tough guy, all tatted up, hung around some shady characters. I get there and he has 2 kittens he just adopted. One of the kittens takes a liking to me, so I'm in a room with these hard-ass tough guys, and while we're passing this blunt around, I'm sitting in a lazy boy chair, and this cat is sitting on my chest and kneading its paws into me and purring. It was the weirdest environment for this to be happening. Story 23, met a nice couple at work, and they invited me and my fiancé at the time for dinner. The dinner was typical, but 2 more couples showed up as it ended, and they wanted us to stick around for other activities. Apparently they thought the way to convince us to join their swingers group was to sneak up on us with it. We politely declined. Story 24, they had a room furnished as a mini chapel dedicated to worshipping Satan, with a big upside cross and an altar and whatnot. In retrospect, I wish I could have taken a photo. Story 25, I met up with this guy to go for our first date, ended up back at his house which he shared with his parents. No big deal, right? As soon as I stepped through the door, the smell of animal feces hits me like a brick. I held my breath and entered the lounge, where there was rubbish and boxes stacked as high as the ceiling. Even in this dude's room, there was boxes and rubbish. They had about 10 cats running around, 5 hamsters, pretty sure one of them was dead in the cage, 3 birds all cooped up in one small bird cage, 3 dogs and an iguana. I never saw him again after I made my excuses and left, blocked the dude's number and blocked and deleted him from my socials. Thank you for watching.